10-day contract for Darius Bazley. He's been playing really well for the Blue Coats. Also part of the showcase that they have for their all-star situation there in the G League.
Yeah.
10-day contract, though. Kyle, what do you make of 10-day contract? Probably just a little bit of something right now as Kyle Lowry takes one. We've been talking about Ricky Council IV maybe getting one of those roster spots, and we'll see about the third. But right now, Darius Bazley, 10-day contract. What do you make of him, the player, the spot right now for the Sixers?
I would say I kind of view it as just a placeholder for right now. I think, one, you're probably just rewarding a guy who has played super well in Delaware, right? Like the stats have been
10. Yep.
21 and 10. He had a big game
in December.
Recently.
Yeah, 43 and I know 1 point. Yeah.
Yeah. So and look, I think under Doc as well, I think the synergy between the Blue Coats and the Sixers has been pretty good. The communication between head coach of the Sixers has been good. So guys are getting, let's say, at least semi-meaningful reps down there that they can come in and they know what they're walking into system-wise, structure-wise. I certainly think Ricky Council proves that. Like, Ricky's been an important part of that Blue Coats team. So the hope would be that Darius can translate some of what he's done in Delaware. I don't think, based on the conversations I've had, or had at least leading into the trade deadline, that he was the sort of player that they were after as like a big, and that's what Bazley is now, right? Like, he has transitioned into more of a, not a true center, but he plays a lot of small ball center or power forward. Those are basically the only two spots that he's playing at this point. And it's just at 6'8", good athlete, can rebound, can block some shots, but is going to get bodied by bigger guys. So I don't think he changes a whole lot. If you were to use him in the 4 spot next to, I don't know, Paul Reed, I guess, or maybe if you played a front court that's like him and Batum, him and Covington, if Covington ever plays again, some decent length and athleticism and things you could do there. But I would say it's more of a, hey, give them like a nice reward type of 10-day than someone they're expecting to
You're
play.
down a couple bodies if you're going to reward a guy playing well for your G League team. Now's the time to do it. To your point, he's having a real good season down there. One thing he's not doing well is shooting the basketball. Shooting 29%.
And that's been his problem.
That's always been the problem. He's just a career 31% three-point shooter in the NBA. He has some size. He has some skills. But if you're going to be a negative assist turnover guy and you can't shoot, it's going to be hard to carve out an NBA career, even as a small ball center. That is why I think you've seen him transition to being more of a small ball center, because he just doesn't have the shooting and the decision-making to be more of a perimeter player. But you would have loved to have seen, like, if you're talking about this being a rebound year in the G League, the 21-10 is great, 3.5 assists, yada, yada, yada. He needs to shoot the basketball and you need to shoot it well. He hasn't been doing that. It's going to be tough to carve out a role on any team, especially one on this team. But, like I said, they're down a couple bodies. They need some minutes. He's been playing well. You want to reward him. But I mostly view it as a tryout and a reward, because otherwise it wouldn't be a 10-day contract. It would be a rest of season contract. It's not what we're talking about. We'll see how he does.
And it's similar to when you talk about, just a placeholder and the type of way that he's used right now. And you think of what we talked about last week when the Phoenix Suns signed Thaddeus Young as a buyout guy. That's the type of, the size, the type of play. But Thaddeus Young is Thaddeus Young and Darius Bazley is Darius Bazley. So totally different in that way, where you have one that's proven later in his career. Of course, the amount of years that Thaddeus Young has been around, but is someone that teams trust for what he does as a small ball center. But if Darius Bazley were to ever get to that level, that's the type of player that you would probably look for in Thaddeus Young, that type of role that he plays as a small ball center in that way. So very curious to see. I mean, he was one of those guys that went overseas when he came out of high school to start his professional career. What was he working for? New Balance? Because I think
I
Rich Paul,
think he was technically conconsidered a New Balance intern, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, and he was one of the first ones to sign with New Balance because Rich Paul, Clutch, his agent, got that going, and New Balance is now taking off in a different way with so many players wearing New Balance, Tyrese Maxey being one of the faces of the New Balance basketball program. But Bazley started that way, went to the Oklahoma City Thunder. He was drafted that next season. And he could never really catch on. And if you remember at that time when he was brought into the Oklahoma City Thunder as a first-round pick, they were still figuring it out. They were still very, very young, and he would get minutes. He would not get minutes.
He had a lot of pedigree. He was like a top 15, top 20 RSC guy.
And that's why he went
guy in high
overseas to
school,
play because he was highly coveted as a prospect coming out of high school, and it just hasn't
Did he go
worked
overseas,
out
or was
for
he
him.
a G League guy?
No, he was a G League.
Was he G
I
League?
thought it was a G League guy.
Okay. I thought he went overseas and played.
You're thinking, is it Terrence Ferguson went to
That's what it was.
Australia?
And he also was with the Thunder. Yes. So you're right. Sorry about that. But Darius Bazley to the G League, and then the intern for New Balance because they were trying to.
And to that point, Devon, actually, I think
things.
Adam Silver was asked about this over the weekend. There was some questioning about the G League Ignite and sort of the viability of that program
because of the
now
NILs.
that NIL is such a prominent thing in college basketball. And it seems like the NBA is reevaluating that. And look, I'm all for these guys having whatever options they want. I do think that if you look at a lot of these guys that have come out of the Ignite, it doesn't seem like they've gotten the meaningful reps that you would hope for, that the structure for whatever reason has not been as good for them as you would hope. Now, some of that could just be this is a small sample. There are only so many guys that have entered the G League Ignite program. So it could just be issues with those guys. They were misevaluated in high school, right? Like if the G League Ignite had existed and, for example, the Harrison twins who went to Kentucky back in the day were two of the big Ignite guys, we'd be like, oh, it failed, but they also failed at Kentucky, right? Like they were not who they were billed as coming out of high school. So it's hard to say, but I think Bazley, along with some other guys, have learned that, right to the G League might not be as good as, especially I think he's more of a wing tweener type prospect. I think for guards, being the man on a college team, I think, just as I think about it philosophically, probably makes more sense than throw a guy in with a bunch of pros at 18 in the G League. That's a sink or swim, and in most cases it's sink. Whereas you get 2 years in college, even 1 year in college, to figure out as teams plan for just you. I think that's a meaningful experience that you might not get as a G League guy.
Yeah, I mean, I think to your initial point, a lot of this probably comes down to it's been a small sample size and we can read too much into it. Like, for example, I mentioned he was the top 20 recruit in high school. The guy right after him in that ranking was Lewis King. He's also in the G League right now. I'm not saying he didn't work out because he went to college. And he's been a very good G League player. But it's out when you get outside of the top 5 in a high school ranking, like shit just tends to be tough to predict. I wouldn't mind seeing people get another path. I wouldn't mind seeing players get a chance to get paid in an environment where they're being developed. But I think we need a little more information before we really know whether it works or not.
Yeah. Only Ignite person I can really think of is Jalen Green for me.
I think in terms of it working,
Kuminga,
Beauchamp, didn't Beauchamp?
Beauchamp. Okay, because the
Kuminga took a while, but also he was viewed as a long-term project type prospect when he was coming out of the
Kyle's
process.
Point might have some merit where like a toolsy wing might be better off going against pros because you can learn, whereas like a short or scoring guard, you want to go against people you have a chance to succeed against so you don't completely change your approach before you've had a chance to physically develop. It's tough to say though.
If I knew the answers, I'd be making a ton of money spearheading this stuff or working in a front office or whatever. So I'm just, anyway, more to the point, I think Bazley, if we're trying to find a use case for him, like let's just say guys are still hurt, whatever, I would say you could probably put him in some small, just switchable lineups. Now, who is available that's actually a switch defender at that point? It's a great question, but between Bazley, Ricky Council, Oubre, if Melton comes back, if Batum is back, there's some decent switch lineups they can put on the floor and spread it out. Now, you can spread it out and Bazley still can't shoot, but if it's a bunch of guards and wings otherwise who can shoot, use him as more of a role man. He's got the hops to go up, and similar to, like bigger KJ Martin, I would say. And Martin's a more vertical athlete, but you have to be when you're 4 inches shorter. So I'd say you probably use him similarly to Martin offensively and hope that he's just a more impactful defender.
And then we're talking about how many minutes is he actually playing out there on the floor with those guys in that role. And should he be out there, let's say the ball swings to him in the corner and someone, closes out, soft on him on the perimeter. he does have the skills to put the ball on the floor to at least get by that defender and maybe finish at the rim and get his points that way.
Definitely one of
And
those
that would
guys
change
that you
some
watch and you just go, man, if he could just ever develop that jumper, he can be a useful NBA player. And he just never developed the jumper.
Yep. All right. Well,
So we'll see.
we'll see what happens.
Best of luck to him.
10-day contract. When does it officially start? Is it Wednesday when they start practice again, or it's Wednesday,
That's a
right?
good question.
I would imagine they'll wait until Wednesday. Or even
There's no
Thursday.
reason to
if they
start the
could.
clock when
Yeah.
nobody's around.
To announce it, yeah, absolutely.
We all silly like the mayor.